Welcome to another Volti Audio one-take video. How you doing? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it. I, as usual, have had a very busy week. Hope you guys have had a good week. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. I've got some cool things to show you here on the shop today, and we'll get to talk about Big Woofers. Are Big Woofers slow? What do you think? I know a lot of people think the bigger the woofer, the slower it is. We'll get to that. So just stick with me, all right? But I'm going to do a bit of a walkthrough of the shop here and show you what's been going on, all right? You ready? Here goes. Tiama rivals. They are waiting for me to finish sand them. All right, I got speakers breaking in, so I'm not going to talk while I go in this room, but just enjoy, okay?
Daddy and your mother, your nanny, even she carries the banner.
What you're feeling is real and this is not a dream. I gotta tell you, this is not what it seems. It's a nerdy kind of thing. We gotta bring a lot of love when we swing. Yes,
the alien becomes on the track once again, because I'm the one that and always did the by the side of the alien and the nappy G. Right.
Cool out here today. I don't know if there'll be any convertible rides today. Hi, Georgia. Hey, sweetie. How you doing? Yeah. And Leah friend. Don't forget about Leah friend. All right. What's in here? Yeah, nothing. But here we have Nick speakers. Nick, it's happening, buddy. I laugh because it's just these things have just taken way too long. I apologize. Supply issues, among other things. Look at those. Woo! Paduk Luceras. These are spoken for. Whose are these? These are Doug. These are Doug's. All right. Let's see what we got here. Dean all of your parts will have finish on this weekend. This is for a pair of Vitoras. Sorry about the glare. Still have those side lights on. All right. Now, I got something I want to show you real quick. When we talk about cone movement later, I want you to see this. You can find videos like this all over the internet. But here, there's no sound, but so you get an idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about cone movement. Now, this is a fairly small driver. I'm guessing this is probably a 6-inch, maybe 5-inch. They might call this a full range. Do they call it full range? No, woofer, low frequency. Well, little woofer. But there you go. So what do you think that's doing to Frank Sinatra's voice? Yeah. All right, I got another one here. Check this out. Now this, this is the car audio, guys. Crazy, huh? Nah, there's no modulation distortion there. But trust me when I tell you, the average car audio guy doesn't care about modulation distortion. All right. Let's go through. I need a coffee. Do y'all have Vitoras hanging out in your kitchen? Yeah. We do. Hang on, I gotta turn on the light. All right, there. All right, bear with me. Get this thing going. I had it warmed up. That's why it started so quickly. So, I want to tell you about something, actually. My wife and I have struggled with the furniture layout in our living room. We've also both struggled with all of the crap that's in our living room all the time. And, you know, from an audio guy's perspective, it's not crap. I mean, I'm working on speaker design. I'm, you know, playing around with subwoofers. I've got different amplifiers kicking around, different DACs and all this stuff. But it's our living room, and neither one of us really wants to have that encroaching on our personal living room. And so we've decided to build a demo room, and it's going to be out a separate building, and there probably will be a car or two involved, car storage involved as well in that building. So that's kind of exciting. We just made that decision. I mean, we've been round and round thinking about what to do. Cheers. And I love the idea of having a separate building for demos. We'll do other things in there too. I'm not going to just use it for demos. I am planning on doing some work out there, do all our testing out there, prototype work. We're going to look for things to do in this building to make good use of it. But it primarily will be Volti Audio demo. Let me show you what I mean. If you've got a nice home and a nice living room, you probably don't have prototype subwoofers hanging out. More than likely, you don't have that kind of a mess within sight. And extra stuff like a set of grills and wires and remotes and a Vinnie Rossi Leo. You probably don't have stuff like that kicking around because, you know, you want to have a nice living room, right? And you can see that primarily what we do in this living room is watch TV. 85-inch OLED, and this is what we do here. You know, I mean, this is for me. It's an hour, probably 2, maybe an hour, probably each night. Lori probably watches a little more than I do, but I enjoy this time out here. I also come out here when I have my breakfast and I watch YouTube videos. So anyway, that's what this room is. If I want to listen to music, as you can see, I have to move furniture around, which is a pain in the ass. You know, I do it, and when I do demos, I set it all up. It's not terrible, you know, but it's enough to discourage you from, you know, from wanting to sit down and listen to music. And so anyway, we've got plans to rearrange this room, and we're going to make it much more useful. All right, bear with me. I want to do something here. These what I showed you on the computer, and what I'm going to do for you right now is all sort of reference, and when we start talking about woofers here in a few minutes. So I'm going to play. By the way, this is a warning, especially for headphone guys. I'm going to put 50 watts into a pair of Luceras. All right. This is 50 watts of carry audio, KT88 output tubes. It's going to get very loud. Trust me when I tell you, the floors are moving in here. The subwoofers are off, by the way. And the floors are pounding. All right. When I put this song on, this is intense. This is knock things, knickknacks off of tables, intense. All right. But I'm gonna put this on 50 watts of power, and I want to show you the woofer and how little it's moving. This is bass reflex configuration. Imagine the same woofer in a horn. All right. And again, this is all for reference when I sit down here and talk to you about woofer speed and modulation, distortion, and all that fun stuff. So here we go. I wonder if this is just going to start. No, of course not, because it's Cobuzz Connect, which means it's a friggin' pain in the ass. I have to reconnect it. So there we go. I've reconnected. It's amazing to me how these companies stay in business. But what's amazing is that other companies don't come along and do it better, because you can do this better. This is not difficult. All right, here we go. You ready? Turn your volume down, okay? What do you think? I love that shit. All right. So, there you go. You notice that the cone of that woofer, right? Now that was not 25 hertz. That wasn't getting down that low. It was getting to, we're talking 40 hertz solid, and down below that, of course. I mean, there is 25 there. It's just down, but that's some serious bass. Pretty cool. So if I put 50 watts into those speakers, that was, that's putting, I don't know, 35 maybe into the woofers. They're 600 watt woofers. You think they're working hard? Nope. Are you guys getting this? How many videos are you going to watch of mine before you start? Well, I'm sure it's starting, but before it just really clicks in where you think, yeah, no friggin' shit, man. Who else is doing this? Who else is doing this? Not GIP. $64,000. The Chicago Horn loudspeaker guys thought that was the best sound of the show. 64 grand for a pair of those things. They were beautiful sounding. They really were. It's a great sound. But no drive. No, not even close to that. Not even in the same universe as what just happened right here. Couldn't do it. Not even close. And I'm not talking just the volume level. I'm just talking about the solid, under everything. Just there. Giving it to you. All right. All right. Comments from the last video. This was, what was this video about? This was, hybrid horn versus fully horn loaded. Did you like that one? I think you did. I got a lot of good comments on it. I did that because really people ask me all the time, what do you mean by hybrid horns? What are you talking about, hybrid horn speaker? Well, now you know. So, John Simmons 5056 says, have you ever thought of building a heresy clone type speaker? We've discussed this before, haven't we? Hang on a sec. I'm hitting. Yeah, we talked about this before, I think. Maybe it's better back here a little bit. Oh, yeah. There we go. Let's see. He says, it'd be great to get something in that form factor, but with better drivers and crossovers, and of course, being able to have a real wood cabinet and veneer choices. Yeah, well, I agree with you. So why not just buy the Raz? John Simmons 5056. Why not just buy a pair of Raz? Come on, dude. Same footprint. Horns are up higher where they should be. The friggin' things pound. They'll pound a pair of heresies to dust. All right. We talked about this before. The simple answer is I can't build a smaller speaker than a Raz for any cheaper than the Raz. And why would I? Why? What are you going to get? Well, you got to tilt the thing back, for crying out loud, just so it points at you the right direction. What are you guys thinking? What are you thinking? The Raz is fine. It's not obtrusive at all. It's no more obtrusive than a pair of heresies. I don't get you guys. I don't understand how your brains are working. It doesn't make any sense to me. Explain it to me, will you? Get in the comments, go in there, and explain it to me. Because I don't get it. I don't get it. These one or two little lines you write, not enough. Tell me what it is about a smaller speaker than a Raz that you have to tilt back, that's going to have less space and cost just as much. What interests you about that? I don't get it. All right. I love making fun of this guy's name. Azwagspak. He's a regular commenter on my videos. He says, I love everything about every one of your videos. Every scene, every comment, every sound clip, etc. Tickles. You should consider doing episodes where you talk to one of your shop guys. I think that would be absolutely fascinating. It's a great idea. I love this idea. And I've thought about it before. so it's not just me babbling on here on a video. We actually sit down and, I don't know, would it be cool maybe to just sit around a table and just talk? Yes. I don't know if one-on-one would be cool. I don't know. I have to think about it. I have to think about what would work. It's got to be. We don't want it to be awkward. It's just got. We want it to flow and be natural and real, because you know how I am about these videos. I just want to keep it real. We're not putting on an act here. All right, but great idea. Ozwags pack. I love it. Thomas Collins, 7932, another regular commenter on my videos, says, totally agree with you on the Raz, loving mine for 4 years now. The Raz looks like a bookshelf speaker next to the Vitora. I thought the same thing. I'm watching the video. I'm like, wow, man, just the contrast. Was that cool or what? The contrast between the Raz and the Vitora sitting side by side. It was very cool. So, Thomas Collins, what do you think? Maybe I'll give you half the side speaker of the Raz. It'll be shorter, and we'll tilt it back, and it will cost the same money. Good idea? All right. Chris Daniels. Hey, Chris. A blast from the past. Great video as usual. The lav mic sounds fine. I have an old book on speaker design from the 1950s I used to study in my early days of trying to learn how to do sound. It taught me how the speed of sound was fundamental to what a horn can produce. Really helped me understand wavelengths and modes. Have you ever thought about passive radiators instead of ports? Have you ever thought about passive radiators in the backs of the speaker instead of ports? And Photoboy 1948 says, great video, Greg, including the one Wednesday showing your team. Yes, did you guys catch that one? This is going to go back a week and a half now. You'll find a video on there, just 4 minutes long. I just walked through a shop, kind of just show all the guys working. It was really cool. A lot of good comments on that one. Some speaker designers use passive radiators instead of ports to boost the bass efficiency. I'd bet my last tequila shot you've tried this. I have not tried it. But I've thought about it for a few seconds, and I thought, well, no. First off, supply for passive radiators is not great. Going out there and finding passive radiators and then designing around them would be limiting to me, whereas ports are much easier for me to work with. I don't really see any advantage in terms of augmenting the low bass with a passive radiator versus a port. In other words, you can do the same thing and get that augmented low bass from the cabinet. But I do see an advantage to having ports because I can put them on the front of the speaker. Ports, I think, should always be on the fronts of speakers. Well, why is that? Well, very simple. We have enough things to deal with, you and I, setting up our systems in rooms, to have to deal with the passive radiator or port reacting or acting against the boundary of the wall behind the speaker. And anybody who's, anybody who's an audiophile who's worked with speakers with rear ports knows that you have to be mindful of what the boundary is behind the speaker. If the speaker's out 8 feet, well, then it's not going to be much of an issue. But for most of us, we have walls fairly close to the speaker. And so you can get the speaker tuned really well, let's say, in out for the port. Whether or not that tunes the rest of the bass ideally for the room, maybe not. And whether or not you can optimize imaging and soundstage while also optimizing port reaction to the rear boundary, probably not going to happen. Whereas if you have a front port, the only boundary you're working against for the most part is the floor. And regardless of how you turn the speaker for proper imaging and soundstage, the port is still pretty much acting the same way against the floor boundary. much easier to place speakers when you have a front port. All speakers should be designed with front ports. So says Greg Roberts of Volti Audio. So great question, guys, and I appreciate you asking because it gave me a chance to answer it, and hope you all found it interesting. Thank you for the comments. Please keep them coming. I love your comments. I read all of them. I don't always reply to all of them. I know I probably should reply more, but you know I'm busy, so. Are Big Woofers slow? Not necessarily. I've heard people say this, especially in the PA world, it seems like. Back when I was doing sound for bands, I remember discussions about, well, if you have multiple smaller drivers, you'll get a tighter sound of the bass than if you have large drivers. And I'm not saying that's not true, but there are plenty of small woofers that I would call having slow bass. And there are plenty of big woofers, like the one I just showed you, that have super tight articulate bass out of a 15-inch woofer. So, I started learning about stuff like this at a young age. When I was, I got into this hobby seriously at age 14 when I bought a pair of Klipsch Scalas. And I did that because, I don't want to go too far back in the story, but this is interesting. I had a Rolling Stone magazine. I'm 13 years old. I got a Rolling Stone magazine. Probably shouldn't have had a Rolling Stone magazine when I was 13. It was just, on the edge of, the subject matter was a little more adult than that. And, but I'm looking through this magazine and I see an advertisement for Sound Lab. You guys remember Sound Lab? And in the Sound Lab ad, they mentioned Klipsch, because they would often compare themselves to Klipsch. And there's more to say about that, but I won't get into it. So anyway, I see this thing, Klipsch. I'm wondering, I don't know what Klipsch is. I'm riding in my mom's car in downtown Waterville, and I see at the top of a big window in a storefront the letters Klipsch in big block letters. Ma! Stop the car, stop the car. And and I get out and I run in there. She caught up with me eventually, but I walked into New England Music Company, which was a store that was, like a lot of hi-fi stores back. This is 1978. And there were a lot of hi-fi stores in 1978. Geez, in our little town of Waterville, we had 3 different hi-fi stores. And one of them was a Bose dealer. The other was JBL. JBL NAD, huh? And then the one I really keyed in on that got my interest was Klipsch. And what else? They had some great brands. They had Macintosh, of course. They had Bang & Olufsen, Tandberg. I want to say Anthem. Was Anthem around back then? It was something like that. And in that room, they had Anthem and Vandersteen. Cool, huh? They had a room out back. Nobody ever went. I never saw anybody in there, but I would go in there all the time. I'd say, hey, can you guys put this on for me? Yeah, okay. So they put it on. And I remember thinking, wow, it's just got this big, fat, stupid bottom end, but there was something about it that was really cool. So I'd always sit there and listen to a couple songs. Then I'd go out and listen to the, the little Scalas or the K-horns they had. And, of course, then it all came together the right way for me when I did that. These were college-age kids. They worked at Colby College. The manager of the place was not college-age. He was a little bit older. Not old enough to be a father to the college kids, right? That that generational thing. And it was just a cool vibe in that place. And but I walked in and there's 2, I don't know, 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds in there running the place. And what wide-eyed 14-year-old me asking what Klipsch is. So these guys have La Scalas hanging up in the room above K horns and a 200-watt Macintosh amplifier. What do you think happened next? So anyway, I think I've told that story before, but it's a great story, and it just is. I'm not the only one that happened to. I hear it all the time from my Klipsch upgrades customers. They tell me, these stories, same, very similar story. I went to the stereo store. I was blown away by it. I've never heard anything since that impressed me as much. And this is what Klipsch did in the 1970s. And but I used to ride my bike there all the time. I was only about a mile away, so I would be in there constantly. I'm sure way more than they wanted to see me. And I did eventually buy something from them. So but they would tell me, because I don't know if you all know, but Klipsch would always visit his stores all over the country, maybe the world for all I know. I don't know. He used to go around and visit his stores, and he'd talk to the guys that work there, and teach all of them how it is, how his speakers, how the Klipsch speakers are better than everyone else's. And he was right. But he'd hone in on things, and these guys met Paul Klipsch. I never got a chance to meet him, but these guys had met him when he came in the store, and he would say that these guys would say to me, "So here's what Mr. Klipsch said," and they would go over the same sort of lines that would come out of Mr. Klipsch's mouth as he would talk about modulation distortion, in particular. And I remember them telling me one day that what Mr. Klipsch had said about modulation distortion, and how these big woofers inside the bass cabinet of a La Scala are moving very, very little and producing this huge sound because it's using the horn. You're listening to a horn. I realize that there is a 15-inch woofer in there, and that's part of the equation, but you have to remember you're listening to a horn. In the case of the La Scala, it's not much of a horn. It's a very crude device. It can really barely be called a horn, and the horn doesn't go very deep, and we do rely on the bass from the fact that you've got a woofer sitting inside a box, two 15-inch woofers sitting inside a V-shaped box in front of you, plays into this as well. So it isn't just about the horn, it's the whole package. But this lesson that Mr. Klipsch would teach everybody about modulation distortion, I think he called it intermodulation distortion. Not really sure if that's true, but I think so. And I don't know if there's any difference, frankly, between intermodulation distortion and modulation distortion. In my mind, it's the same thing. You're talking about a cone of a woofer moving to produce bass, and that cone is also producing mid-range. So mid-range is coming off of this paper cone that's moving, that's pulsating to produce bass. That's how my mind thinks of it anyway. And that's how I want you to think of it. And so this higher frequency, the mid-range, is being modulated, bent actually, muddied by the movement of the cone. The less cone movement, the less that happens. It isn't about big woofers being slow or distorting more and smaller woofers being fast. That's not true at all. In fact, if you take your average hi-fi speaker that has, 2 or 3 little 6 or 8 inch woofers in the front of it, those are having to exert a lot. They're having to move quite a bit, aren't they, in order to produce bass. That distance that cone moves in order to produce that bass is slower. The bass is slower than on the woofer I just showed you a few minutes ago that's moving very little and producing a lot of bass, right? If you just think of it strictly the distance that the woofer cone has to move, if it has to move that far versus that far, it's slower than this one. Am I right about that? Am I wrong about that? Well, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you think of this subject. But I know one thing for sure, that any woofer, whether it's a big one or a small one, that is moving a lot is producing modulation distortion. And any woofer that's moving very little is producing less modulation distortion. And it is a fact that high sensitivity speakers, like the one I just showed you, have woofers that move less and they have lower distortion. And they're still producing concrete shaking bass with 50 watts input or 10 watts input. So it's not about woofer size. I was at an interview one time. The interviewer asked me that question. I had no idea it was coming. And I wasn't prepared for it. And I didn't answer it very well. I muddled through the answer. And I thought about it later. I thought, yeah, I could have answered that a lot better. You know, I've heard, oh, Greg, I've heard that big woofers are slow. Or, you know, you have these big 15-inch woofers in your speakers. And aren't they, doesn't that make a slow bass? And I really wasn't prepared for that question. But what I should have said is, no, in fact, it's just the opposite. If you have a small woofer, it's going to have to move a heck of a lot more to produce bass. And that movement is slow compared to the little tiny movement that my big woofer does. That would have been the right answer. Without even talking about distortion. High sensitivity, baby. By the way, high sensitivity comes from a lighter motor structure, right? You're talking the motor structure being the cone, the voice coil, and whatever the spider, the structure of the woofer that's moving, that part in a high sensitivity woofer is lightweight. That's the nature of high sensitivity. You take very little power, can move that lightweight cone inside the right size box. You can get a lot of bass from it at very high sensitivity. And it is that lightweight cone that moves very little. It's a lightweight cone that just like you saw, just moves just a little bit and produces this huge sound. And to me, that's a woofer that's not working hard, that is not distorting, that is producing tight, clean, articulate, well-defined bass. And that's what makes a Fender bass guitar sound like a Fender bass guitar really sounds, right? It's not just a flat, lightweight picture of a Fender bass guitar, like so many speakers I hear at the shows that are beautiful. They're so beautiful sounding. Yes, they're so beautiful sounding because they're not fucking doing anything. They're not giving it to me. Sorry. You know I'm passionate about this stuff. Anyway, one last thing about that, and I touched on this on the La Scala and folded bass horns. That is the ultimate example of a large woofer moving very, very little. It works very similarly in bass reflex. So don't think that when we talk about low distortion, low modulation distortion, Mr. Klipsch always pointed to the K horn when he talked about that, and rightfully so, because that's a speaker that has a long horn, a long bass horn, very cleverly tucked into a corner, with a woofer that moves very little and gets you down to low 30 hertz range. An amazing design, absolutely amazing design, and so he really focused on that. But heck, I mean, he did the Heresy, right? He did the Cornwall. These are bass reflex speakers, and the same principles apply. It's not quite the same. Those woofers are moving more. There is more modulation distortion, but compared to, if I think back to that visit to the Klipsch store in 1978, we had Diorsi's music store in the mall. And they had JBL speakers, the 4311s and the L100s. Those speakers had woofers that moved a lot, didn't they? You think about how lightly sprung, is that the right way to put it? How fluidly sprung those cones were, and a huge modulation distortion from those. And that's what Mr. Klipsch was talking about, really. That's what he was comparing to back in the day. And bass reflex speakers that Volti Audio is making, not like that. Same with Cornwall, same thing. Those woofers are moving very little, and they might have higher modulation distortion than a horn, but a bass horn, but still far, far less, when compared to some of these speakers that I hear at the shows, like the Acora speakers. I talked about it last week or the week before. That Acora system that I heard that was trying desperately to play ZZ Top Lagrange, it just didn't work at all. Those woofers are just flapping around. I mean, they're just just the most ridiculous thing. I mean, just absurd, especially when you consider the cost of that system and how poorly it performed. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. Please leave your comments. I love it when you leave comments. So, and also give me a thumbs up if you think I deserve it. I love having you here. And I'll be back next week with another riveting discussion about something I have no idea what yet. We'll figure it out. Trust your ears. Have fun. Catch you later.